The front wheel bearing on my Volvo has gone, and I need to make a tool to press the old bearing out and press the new bearing back in again without damaging the bearing. I've got a piece of steel plate here, it's 1/2 inch thick, about 12.5 mil. I cut a couple of pieces off the end of it. I'll have 2 pieces about 150 mil square, and I'll have those welded to a spacer tube, so there'll be 1 square underneath, spacer tube, and another plate on the top with some holes machined into them. That's the 2 square plates cut to size. I need holes through the middle of each plate. 1 hole will have to allow the bearing to pass through, and the other hole will be smaller to press the bearing in. So to make the hole roughly to size, I'm going to drill a series of holes and then fix the plate on the faceplate of the lathe and machine it to the correct size. That's all the holes drilled. I'll run a jigsaw round here to cut this piece out, and then these 2 holes, they'll be tapped 8mm for fixing onto the faceplate. Cut those out. That's the spacer tube. I've rolled a piece of steel to make the tube because it had to be a certain size inside diameter. Just needs to clear the flange on the hub. So that spacer tube will be welded with 1 plate underneath and the other plate on top. The whole thing will be split in 2 pieces. And to hold it together, I'll have 2 flange plates welded down there and down this side, with a couple of bolts to each side. This is going to be machined out first. Got one of the plates in the lathe, machining out the middle. Got it bolted onto the faceplate. Piece of aluminium sheet between the plate and the faceplate, so as I don't dig into the faceplate with a tool. That's one of the plates machined. The bearing housing will sit against this recess, and the bearing will push out through that hole. The plate here now is about 9mm thick, and that has to fit between the hub flange and the bearing housing. Got both plates machined. This plate is the one that will push the new bearing in. That's the new bearing, and this part of the plate has to fit between the back of those studs and the underside of that bearing. So when the plate's cut in half, one half of the plate will fit from this side and the other half from the other side. I've got the spacer tube split on both sides. A temporary disc in each end with a duplicate around to hold the tube at the right diameter until I get it welded onto these plates. Starting to weld it all together. This is one of the flange plates that will hold the two halves together. That's the other one. I've got that fully welded. Now I'm cutting these plates in two pieces. Done that bit with a jigsaw. I'll have to do this bit with a 1mm slitting disc in the grinder. That's the plates cut in half. So this side with the smaller of the two holes is for pressing the new bearing back in. So you'll fit the bearing like that. Bolt that together with 4 bolts. And then with a long threaded rod, probably use some M20. That'll go straight down through the middle, through the hole in this plate. So that'll sit over the top of that hole. And then the bolt will come up through the bearing housing, and that should press the bearing housing onto the bearing. And the bearing's supported by the outer race, so that should stop the bearing from getting damaged. This is the bearing I've got to change. It's the right hand front bearing on Volvo V50. So to get this housing off the car, that ball joint's got to come undone. This bottom one, there's a bolt here that clamps this piece to the strut. I've taken the bolt out of the end of the drive shaft, and then it should come off. That's the hub carrier mounted in the jig. A 20mm threaded rod up through the middle. And now we're going to put a spacer on there, a nut on, and try and push that bearing out. It has started to go. Yeah, it's gone about 5mm. Yeah, that's going to work. That's the bearing out. Took a bit of moving to start with. Pressing the new bearing in. That's the new bearing all the way in. You can see there it's up to the shoulder. I did warm this casting with a hot air gun just to get it warm. That's bound to expand it just a little bit. Just need to take the jig off. Taking the 4 bolts out. That's the new bearing fitted. Just struggling to get this casting back on the strut. So I've nailed 4 pieces of wood together and I'm going to try and jack it up. That seems to be working. I think that's about it. I just checked the measurement from there to that label. Before I took it off, it was 60mm from the top of the casting to the underside of that corner of the white label.